Okay, so I decided to do a little bit of character creation, and I figured that I would show you guys my process and then also show you guys the voices that I came up with. So where I started was I wanted to find pre-drawn characters so I don't have to come up with everything on my own. And I went to YouTube and I found an artist that goes by the username of Prickly Alpaca, and she has some really great artwork on her YouTube channel, and she had done a video where she used a random character generator to draw characters from based off of the description. So I reached out to, is this refocusing? So I reached out to her and asked her if I could use the characters that she drew for her video to put voices to, and she was fantastic and gave me permission, so that's what I did. So I picked 2 of the characters that she drew on her YouTube channel, and I'm going to show it somewhere around here, Bella. And what I'm going to do is I'll show you a little bit of the process, and I'll kind of describe what I did in the process of making these characters, the things that I paid attention to, the direction that I was going, the considerations that I had, and then also show you the results with the characters voicing a piece of writing. So I hope you like it. Okay.
Grandmother used to tell a story of a young woman who lived in the far north and was known by her wild spirit. Many men sought her hand in marriage. Sedna refused, following her own inner knowing.
So my approach to this young Inuit girl was first to look at her, see what she was wearing, look at the expression on her face, the stature that she has, and get a sense of who she is and where she came from. And the style of drawing reminded me of Avatar: Last Airbender from Nickelodeon, and I wanted to kind of maintain the style of voice that you might see on those children's shows. I didn't want to go too heavy and dark into an Inuit accent. I wanted it to still be something that could play on those mainstream shows. And I also started looking into Inuit culture and finding picture references that kind of inspired me and made, a character come together in my mind.
One day, a stranger came to the village. Sedna felt drawn to him and left with him on his boat. They rowed far out to an island in the middle of the sea. When they reached shore, the man drew back his hood to reveal he was a raven. Sedna knew she was in the hands of a shaman. She stayed with him in his cave and learned his magic.
So after I did a couple runs of finding the tone of voice that seemed appropriate for her age, then I started diving deeper into the Inuit culture, and I watched a lot of videos of Inuit singing, drum dancing, interviews from Inuit women talking about their culture. I studied the way that they phrase things, the way that they emphasize things, the cadence in which they speak, the musicality that they use. I also looked a lot at how resonant their voices were, which was something that stood out to me. The placement of their mouth, how they held their mouth and formed the accent.
After much time had passed, Sedna's father grew afraid for her. He left to sea to rescue her. He found her and carried her to his boat. When Raven returned from his hunt, he realized Sedna was gone. He cawed and summoned the winds of a great storm. He thrashed and throwed the boat. Sedna's father feared for his life and begged with Raven to take his daughter and spare him. He threw Sedna overboard.
And then once I did my study in the Inuit culture, then I formed the scene in which this story is taking place. So I found a traditional Inuit story that I kind of paraphrased after reading a bunch of the story versions and watching some videos. So this character has something to say that's relevant to who she is. And then I came up with a scene in my head as to what the context of her reading the story is, which informs a lot of that very subtle underlying emotion and intention in the story. So I imagined that she was in, this drum circle with a fire in the middle. Maybe they're out on a glacier or out on the ice, and this is an annual tradition, and it's her turn to get to tell this story to the younger children in the tribe, and perhaps some of the elders are watching, things like that, to help me feel like I'm in that place and help me take on that character. And I also focused on finding that nice balance between having parts of her accent reminiscent of a traditional Inuit accent, while also having more of that Americanized accent that you might see on Nickelodeon or something like that.
Sedna cried, screamed for her father, gripping on the side of the boat. Her father beat her hands until her fingers broke off. Sedna drifted out to sea, struggling to catch her breath. She looked and saw her fingers had turned to whales and seals swimming in the waves. Sedna released her breath and allowed herself to be swallowed by the sea. The water grew dark and quiet and still. No longer bound by flesh and bones, Sedna became one with the dark waters. And knowing the wisdom and magic of the deep, Sedna became goddess of the sea.
"Will you walk into my parlor?" said a spider to a fly. "'Tis the prettiest little parlor that you ever did spy. The way into my parlor is up a winding stair, and I have many pretty things to show you when you are there."
So looking at this second character, my first thoughts were, villainess, that black and green villain color palette. And she also struck me as perhaps being Japanese. And I thought of Japanese trap music, where it's reminiscent of, traditional, perhaps samurai music. That's usually what the picture is for Japanese trap music, mixed with more electronic EDM type of music. So where I started with her was I was looking at her physicality. She's very skinny and bony and reminded me a bit of Yzma from Emperor's New Groove. I started looking for where her vocal placement would likely be in the mouth. And this character was actually a bit easier for me to develop than the Inuit girl, since the Inuit girl was more based in reality and had a full culture to her.
"Oh, no, no," said the little fly. "To ask me is in vain, for who goes up your winding stair can never be seen again."
So I found a vocal placement that I was more or less happy with, and then I was trying to think of something that she would be saying so I could embody her voice. And I thought about that old nursery rhyme, I guess, of the spider and the fly, and kind of went with that. And it was really as simple as that. The main focus that I had while creating this voice was getting very specific as to the context in which I was telling this story. Because she's clearly a human, and she's telling the story of the spider and the fly, very much embodying the character of the spider, but she's telling this story to someone, and I imagined that she's telling it to the person that she mentally is embodying as the fly. And I had to get very specific as to exactly what was going on so I would know how to approach each leg of the story that she's telling.
"I'm sure you must be weary with soaring up so high. Will you rest upon my little bed?" said the spider to the fly. "There are pretty curtains drawn around. The sheets are fine and thin. And if you'd like to rest a while, I'll snugly tuck you in."
I hope you guys enjoyed it.
It was fun to create, and I'm probably going to do some more in the future. Let me know if there's any suggestions that you have. Like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys next time.